Hello and welcome to another edition of the RewirEd Talks. I'm Shudha Chakravarti, the head of research at EU Business School. And firstly, I would like to thank RewirEd for providing this platform to us and for engaging us at this critical juncture as the world comes out of the pandemic. We also look forward to the RewirEd Summit in December of this year in continuing this conversation on higher education. And we would also like to mention the exemplary leadership that has been provided by the Emirate of Dubai. As a 21st century business school, we are also engaged in the proliferation of discourse as well as content on inclusivity, sustainability, as well as prosperity through higher education. And in today's conversation, we are joined by Mr. Luke Crane, who is the Managing Director as well as the Vice President of EU Business School. He has been leading EU Business School for the past 16 years. And there are a few questions that I would like to ask him on the future of business education, particularly in line with what is the new value proposition for 21st century business schools. We would also be talking about the future of work as well as the disruptions that will be created through automation. And finally, we will come to a more nuanced topic in terms of leadership as well as a stakeholder approach that can be adopted by business schools. Thank you, Luke, for joining us. I would like to start with the pandemic. This pandemic has disrupted every sector, and that includes education. And why education? This has been one of the sectors that has been completely insulated from earlier disruptions. So coming out of the pandemic, what is the value proposition for business schools in the future? How will business schools need to adapt to these realities?
Shudha, first of all, thank you very much for having me. It's true that the pandemic has been quite challenging for certain business schools as well to adapt. I think at EU Business School we did quite well because we had been running an online campus since 2012. The transition has been pretty smooth for our students. But it's true that it's not only shifting classes online that we needed to do. We needed to bring the full ecosystem to a virtual platform. And we needed to ensure that we remained engaged with our students. Because education is much more than just transferring knowledge. It's really about context where the students are active learners in the entire process. It's not only watching at the screen and listening to a faculty member, but it's really being part of this entire experience. I don't think we'll be going back to where we stood before the pandemic. There is definitely be a post-pandemic model that will be coming in, where hybrid will be leading, in my opinion, where students will be able to choose between taking classes as much on campus that they will be able to take online. Higher education has been an industry that has been pretty still for the last 15 years. And due to the pandemic, I think it has been a major booster to bring innovation in higher education model. There will be a big impact on the way we will be bringing education to the students, but also improving the experience of the students. Might it be virtual or might it be in the classroom? It is still a challenge, but in the future, this pandemic will bring a lot of good to higher education.
Thank you, Luke. You spoke about opportunities. So, of course, the pandemic situation has brought in a lot of challenges, but it has heralded a lot of opportunities, and we have been thrust into the future, at least by 5 years, depending on the sectors, etc. And since you spoke about opportunities and how education, and particularly higher education as well as the business school model, would need to adapt to these realities, what are your views in terms of upskilling and constant skills development that we are talking about these days? So, how would you view, or what is your vision of higher education in the 21st century?
That's a really good point. I think the saying, learning is a lifelong journey, cannot be more accurate today. So there has been a lot of trainings that have been happening. Might they be internal in companies, might they be external through other programs, but we have seen really short-term programs that have been coming up. And that's definitely a trend that will be continuing. There is also a new demand. Because now everything needs to be digital. There are way more new concepts that are needed. And I think this last year has been a booster in terms of those learning needs. So the curriculum as well will be changing in the future, adding much more IT skills to our students, a curriculum that is not only business focused, where we on one side will be developing the soft skills of our students, because that will still remain, and I think we'll be coming back to that later when we'll be talking about the future of work, but also looking at setting up the skills for the students in terms of being able to use the technologies and interpret all the data that we're collecting from those technologies. But I insist really on the fact that there will be offers on terms of continuous learning. Those offers might not only come from higher education institutions, but they might also come from other providers, might be consulting firms, might it be one of the GAFAs. Higher education and training is becoming an interest for all the different players out there. We have also seen and that has already been a couple of years now, the increase of MOOCs. More and more higher educations institutions are offering MOOCs. Some of those courses will be qualifying, will be for credits, will be leading to a diploma, will be leading to a degree or to a certification. Some of them will not, but will be for the sake of the people gaining some knowledge. We see also the increase of the digital badges coming up, obviously, with through those MOOCs. You have more qualifications that will be there, that will be able to be exposed on the LinkedIn and all the social media profiles, to really go for specific qualifications. So what I see is that people will go for a general education program, might it be business, might it be something else, and after they will be looking at clearly going in more narrow niche specializations, and that will be the role of the MOOCs, of the continuous education models that will be there. Might it be short-term programs, it can be a couple of weeks, it can be a couple of months, it can be virtual, it will be presential. You will have a large offering out there, but that's definitely something that will stay. Finally, I also think that collaboration will be much more present. In the future, students might not only take classes at one institution, but they will be able to take bits and pieces of different courses in different institutions to make them qualify to earn their degree. So the answer will not be individual, but will be collaborative in this case.
Thank you very much, Luc. What I gather from your answer, there are 2 points that I would like to make. So first, you're saying that you cannot see education as an end in itself that we used to in the past. So it's going to become more collaborative, it's going to become lifelong. It's not that your education finishes with a degree. The second thing that I gather is, with the disruptions that have been that we are faced with, it will allow more inclusion, because now you have more providers in the education sector than what was erstwhile true. Now, using this, the answer that you provided in terms of collaboration, in terms of upskilling and the constant need to reskill yourself, we recently had representation at EU Business School from the Oxford Martin School on the future of work. And one of the points that were made was that, at least from the perspective of US, that 47% of future jobs are susceptible to automation. So as business schools, particularly in terms of the kind of skills that we provide to our students, or the kind of research that we do, how do we model ourselves to meet those challenges, let's say by 2050 or even 2030, if automation is actually leading to the loss of jobs?
The question still remains if automation will be actually killing more jobs than it will be creating. And that's still a question that is out there, because you read a lot about automation, artificial intelligence that will be replacing jobs, but you don't hear much about the job creation that those technologies will be bringing. Like, then we need to change a little bit our curriculum in this aspect, and the education we give to the students, because the business education from 10 years ago will no longer be accurate. Education needs to be seen as an entertainment in some aspects, where we need, one, to entertain the students, to bring this willingness and this eagerness for them to learn. And that can not only be by ex cathedra course of a faculty member talking only, but the students need to become real active participants. And that's even more important for the Gen X, because they have been immersed to technology for their entire life. So we need to be ready to pass on this information. We need to develop the critical thinking, and that's an important aspect. It sounds like a simple word, but today everybody is immersed with tons of data and tons of information. I think, speaking specifically about business programs, a traditional business program will not only survive. And it needs to be a mix where we will need to include design, where we'll need to include engineering, information technology aspects in the curriculum. As a matter of fact, we just signed an agreement with the Amazon Web Services, where all of our students will be able to join the AWS programs and still get a certification. We are also developing those type of partnerships where we will be bringing coding into the program, because those skills will be required in the future. But we need to ensure that students develop this critical approach, this critical thinking. We need to ensure that people will develop their soft skills, because the soft skills are really important and will remain really important, because leading people will still be an asset, and communicating is key. Passing on the right message to the population will be key. And finally, develop a Swiss knife, if I may say so, of different other skills that they will be able to add to their CV in order to be more employable.
Thank you very much, Luc. So the future is interdisciplinary. We have to move towards a model that is interdisciplinary as well as collaborative. And this is something that we focus at EU Business School with in terms of the stakeholder approach, at least in education. And now we come to something a little more nuanced, and the stakeholder approach, and business schools particularly have been blamed by many for the kind of economic malaise that we are currently in. In this light, of course, we understand that all sectors, if you're talking about sustainability, if you're talking about inclusion, we have to have some sort of a universality. Everybody has to pitch in. And of course, business schools, as being, let's say, the pioneers for innovation or innovative thinking, we need to also change our model towards a more stakeholder approach. And this I'm now contrasting with the shareholder approach for businesses that has been the model since the 1970s, where the main purpose for business schools is to teach students to create more value for their shareholders. And now we're moving to a different narrative where we have to be responsible for the broader stakeholders. What are your views on that? And do you think it is the role for business schools to move in that particular direction?
Very good question, and I think it's essential nowadays. And is it the role of the business school only? No. Are we part of the solution? Certainly. And it's definitely something that we have been seeing, but it's also something that has been growing in the students. When you have new students coming in, and I welcome the bachelor students, you see that the Gen X is much more sensitive to all those issues. Might it be sustainability, might it be inclusion, it's definitely part of their language and their speech whenever they talk. So we are there to guide them, and it needs to be part of our curriculum. And it is definitely part of whenever we do case studies, whenever we do class discussions, we try to fully integrate those concepts. Might it be sustainability, might it be integration, might it be growth, but sustainable growth. All those aspects are clearly included in the curriculum. We, with our academic council, have made sure that 30% of the curriculum is at least covering the sustainability aspects and the inclusion aspects. In all the rankings, quality reports that you are looking at, they want to see, and if you want to rank higher in those reports, it definitely needs to be part of your agenda as an institution, where they look at the equality in terms of faculty members, in terms of board members, in terms of staff members. Again, the sustainability plan needs to be well defined. Those are topics that are looked at more and more seriously, and where, as an institution, might be higher education, but I think every business nowadays is clearly looking into.
So that's a good thing. I mean, which was my first point, that education has primarily been insulated from these kind of disruptions. But now even education is accountable to challenges of, let's say, inclusivity, sustainability, and of course, creating prosperity, etc. But with that, I just want to ask you, what is Luc Crane's view on the future? at least in terms of higher education? And are we on a sustainable, are we on an inclusive path?
I would say yes, definitely. The pandemic has made us rethink, review a lot of processes. It has, as I said, boosted innovation in the higher education industry. Something that was a bit dormant, if I may say so. It was, you had some great institutions that were really pushing it, but I think it has definitely touched the higher education industry as a whole, and everybody needed to start moving in this regard. Now it's all about continuing this journey. In the next 10 years, higher education will be even more challenged. Something that we realized with the pandemic is that we were as isolated as possible because all the borders were closed, but at the same time we have never been as connected to the world because everything was only a Zoom away. Multidisciplinary is the way, and collaborative. I don't know a lot of institutions that will be able to go alone. It's all about bringing strengths of each institution within a program, like you would do a sports team, like you will be building up your Champions League winner in some aspect, where you don't only need big stars, but you need everybody that will be able to contribute to this model and to this final goal. And that will be the goal of how I perceive higher education in the future as well.
Thank you, Luke, for engaging in this very interesting conversation. So partnership is the future, and the future is collaborative, and we look forward once again on behalf of EU Business School and ONResearch, its research arm, to partner in future with RewirEd. Thank you very much for joining.
Thank you.